Hey guys, we're going to get started in just a moment. Hey everyone, welcome to the Build-A-Bot workshop. I'm Mac. I'm the community manager in charge of events at TopGG. And today we're going to be basically going through a sort of like first-timers workshop for anyone who has like never made a bot before. The idea is you'll be able to work along with us using the GitHub repository, which has just been pinned in YouTube chat. And so we're going to work through that together. We're going to go through the whole process. I'm going to show you now what exactly we'll be doing. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask them in the chats in YouTube. And so we're going to move on to what is included in today's event. So first off, first thing we're going to do today is we're going to create your bot's application. This is done through the Discord developers portal, and so we'll go through that later in more detail. Second of all, we're going to figure out, I'm going to show you how to work with Git within Visual Studio Code. And that is our third point, which is working with an IDE. So we're going to learn a bit more about what an IDE is and how to work with one. Then we're going to also go through the Discord.js library. So we will be using JavaScript for this event, for this bot, because JavaScript just is a library, like the DJS library has a lot of documentation out there, and so it's just a good place to start as a beginner. There are other libraries out there, like Python, for example, that they're also good alternatives. But for the purpose of this event, we will be using JavaScript. Next, number 5, we'll be bringing your bot online. Then we're going to create our first command once our bot is online. And finally, last step will be submitting your bot to TopGG. And so I'll walk you through the process of that too. All right, so before we start, there were some prerequisites. You can go to the GitHub repository, which is linked in the pinned messages in chat here, and you'll be able to see kind of a bit of what is involved. So I'm just going to go and talk through that a bit. So this is the GitHub repository, which we shared. And if you scroll down a bit here, you'll be able to see some of the prerequisites we have here before we start. So you're going to want to install Visual Studio Code, Node.js, and create a Discord server to test your bot in if you don't already have one. You can test your bot in any Discord server, but usually it's a good idea to have like a place to test new bots. And we also here in the README, we have some useful links. So we have the shortcut link to the Discord developers portal, which we'll be talking about later on. So feel free to come back here and reference this document if you need any links to any places. Also down below, we have some useful resources. So we have a Discord.js guide, we have the official DJS documentation, and then some other resources here as well. Here is a help article for how to add your bot to TopDG. There's a Discord bot permissions calculator for when we're going to create our invitation link. And also down below, you will find some resources used in this project. So I'm going to go through this a bit later on, but if you want to use the same resources as I'm going to be using today and make the same command I'm making, then you can work along with me and use the same stuff by downloading it there. All right, so once you've got all of that, we're ready to move on to our next stage. So step number one. Step number one is going to be creating our Discord bot application. So this happens on the Discord developers portal. So once again, you can go back to that README, click on the link for the Discord developers portal, and you should arrive on a similar screen to be able to create your Discord application. So you're going to create a new application, and once you do, you'll arrive on a screen like this. So here, this is basically the application which your bot will be contained within, I guess, is kind of an easy way of explaining it. And on this page, you fill out your application name and details here, so your description. And you can also find the application ID. You can also set an icon for the application, but note this isn't the same as the bot avatar. The bot avatar is under the bot client. So once we've made the application and created the name and descriptions, we're going to move on then and add a bot to it. So you're going to go down to the bot tab down on the left-hand side there, and then click add bots. So this will create a bot client which you'll be able to work with in Discord. And once you do that, you can then fill out your bot name, your bot avatar, and you can also then decide if it's going to be public or not. And you can also grant access to some privileged gateway intents. So one thing that's worth knowing is those intents are open to any bot once it's new, like if it hasn't been verified by Discord yet. But once it comes to like the point of verification, you have to apply for those intents separately. So in the beginning, you'll get access to those, but you will have to apply for them in the future. For today's bot, we're not going to be using any intents, so there's no need to activate those. All right, so the next part is inviting our bots to our server. So once you've created that bots client on the Discord developers portal, you have the ID, the client ID, which is the application ID, basically, same thing. So these are different things which we're going to be using in our invitation link. So the invitation link, I think I have an example of it here on my next slide, looks a little something like this. So it'll be discord.com/auth2/authorize, and then you have parameters. So in URLs, parameters are basically things that are added onto the end of the link after a question mark. So this is going to be a list of parameters. So our first parameter in our invitation link is client_ID. And this is your client ID. So this is going to be the application ID for the application we created earlier. So you can go back to your portal, copy the ID, and paste it into this link. And then the other parameters, which we're going to be including today, the scope parameter, and we're going to be using bot and also application commands, because today we're going to be making a bot which uses / commands and not prefixed message commands. And finally, the final parameter is permissions. And in our case, we're going to be using 0, which means we're just going to be using the default permissions. We're not going to be requiring anything special. Because for our use case, we don't really need anything more than that. Okay, so you're going to create that link and paste it into your browser. And once you do, you'll be able to invite your bot to your server. So once you've pasted that link into your browser URL bar, you'll have the invitation, like when you go to invite a bot, this is what you get. So you'll arrive on a screen like this from Discord. You can then authorize this to add it to your server. So pick a server, add it. So we're going to be using like our testing server, which we made earlier. So that was one of our prerequisites. And once we do, then our Cappy boat, our bot will be invited into our testing server. And so for now, it'll show us offline. It's not going to be online yet because it's just like a blank account. We haven't actually set up the bot yet. So that is going to be our next step. So do we have any questions for this first part? I don't see anything in chat, so yeah, all right. Okay, so we'll move on now to the next step, which is working with Git. All right. Yeah, we will be using DJS today. See that in chat. Okay. So now we're going to go back to the GitHub repository, which is pinned here in the chats. And it's also, so you can go back to this repository, and then up the top, we're going to fork it. So go up and click fork. And this is going to be a way for you to create a copy of it, which you can then work on and create your own branch of this bot and make something unique to yourself. So go to this page and click fork. And then you can rename it to basically anything you want and put it in your own GitHub profile. So I'm going to call mine Cappy Boats because my version of this is going to be a bot which posts capybara GIFs. So I'm going to add in my repository name and my description. And once I do that, I'm going to create my fork. This isn't going to be in the purpose of today's tutorial, but if you want, you can also just create a blank repository if you want to start from scratch, but this might be a little bit more advanced. So for today, we're going to skip over this, but today we're going to be forking the repository which is pinned here, as I mentioned before. Okay. So once we've created our fork, we're going to be able to start working with our IDE. So our IDE is going to be Visual Studio Code. So once again, if you haven't installed it yet, this is the time to do it. So you have a link in the README on the GitHub repository to Visual Studio Code's website. And that is where you're going to be able to download the application and install it. So this is what we're going to be using today to code our bots. So this is the application, basically, which we will be coding in, but also it's linked to GitHub so that we can update our GitHub repository from Visual Studio Code. We're also today going to be hosting our bots within Terminal in Visual Studio Code, just for the purpose of this demonstration. So you can host your bots on a VPS, a virtual private server. You can find some examples of good VPSs, like go to the development channel in the TopGG Discord server. If you go to the pinned messages in the development channel, you can see some examples of some VPS companies which can rent you a VPS to host your bot on. But today we're going to be self-hosting, which means we're going to be hosting the bot from our own computer through the terminal in Visual Studio Code. So don't worry, I'm sure this will be a lot clearer in a moment once we get there. Okay. So once we've opened Visual Studio Code, you will get a screen something like this. So first of all, we're going to clone our GitHub repository. So this is going to be the fork that we created and not the original one. So you're going to copy the URL from the fork that you created and click Clone Git Repository. And this pop-up window will appear where you can enter the URL for your fork of the repository. So you're going to paste it in there and then hit enter. So this is basically going to download the code from GitHub onto your local machine and allow you to work with it. And then once you make changes and save them, you can then push them to GitHub, which means saving it to GitHub so that you have different version control, which is handy if you want to roll back something or if you want to have a history of of what your bot looked like maybe a month ago. Sometimes that can be useful, but also just to have a backup of that code, it's a good idea to have it on GitHub. So yeah. So next up, and don't worry, this token is no longer valid. So we're going to need to create a .env file, and this is going to be your bot token. So you'll find your token on your bot's developer portal page by clicking Reset Token. So what is a token? Basically, a token, think of it like a password. So your token is the password that your bot client is going to use to log into Discord. So go back to your developer portal, and under the bot tab, you will have a button near the bot's avatar where you can click to reset the token. This will show you the token, which you can then copy and paste into the env file. So within the env file, we're going to be doing, in capital letters, Discord_token equals, and then in inverted commas, we're going to have our token. So paste it in there, and then save that file. You can either do file save or Control-C, Control-S, or Command-S if you're on Mac, and that'll save your env file to your local machine. So any changes we're making here are all made within the directory on our computer. This isn't making any changes to GitHub yet. All right. Once we have our token saved in the env file, we can go and try, and we're going to start the process of starting up the bot. So we've successfully cloned the repository. We've successfully created a bot application, and we've also copied the token and created the env file using that token. So now we're going to be able to start our terminal. But just before we do this, we're going to do one last thing. We're going to go back over to Visual Studio Code here. I'm just going to share my screen because there's one last thing we need to do, and that is create our config file. So for the purpose of this demonstration, we have this file we need to create. So it's config.json. And here we're going to add in our client ID. So it's going to be client in lowercase, in uppercase I, lowercase d. And this is your application ID from the developer portal. And underneath this, we're going to have our guild ID. So this is the ID of the testing guild that we created to test our bot in. So what is a guild ID? How do I get one? If you don't know yet, I'm going to just switch over to Discord here and show you how you can get your ID. So within your testing guild, you're going to go up here to the guild name, and then go right click and then copy ID. This will allow you to copy your guild ID. And then you can just go and paste that back into Visual Studio Code. So once you have your client ID in this JSON file and your guild ID, we can then save this same way as we did the env file. So either do file save or Control S or Command S if you're on Mac. So now we've saved our config file and our .env file. So now we should have everything ready to start our bots. So back to terminal. At the top of the screen in Visual Studio Code, you will have a tab called Terminal. So you can click on that and then click New Terminal. So that will open a window at the bottom of your screen. And this is your terminal. So the terminal is a place where you can debug errors in your code and also run commands like to start up the bot and other things. So after clearing the repo and doing everything we've done, we can now use terminal to start our bot. So everything is, all the files like locally stored on our computer, and creating a terminal like this will create it within that directory, so we can then self-host from Visual Studio Code. So this is something useful even in the future if you're just running like a beta test, or you're just playing around with some ideas. This is just a quick way of like self-hosting a bot just to run some ideas through. So this is what your window should look like now. So down the left-hand side, number 1, these are your project files. So this is like all the files that are within our bot. We have an empty commands directory with just the ping file in it. And we have our env file we saved. We have our config file and the other files from the GitHub repo. Part 2 on the screen, this is where your file editor will appear. So when you click to open a file, it'll appear in this section of the window. And this is where you're going to be able to edit your code. And then finally, number 3 is your terminal in your project directory. And this is where you'll be able to see like any error logs. And this is also where we're going to be starting our bot. Before we do anything, we're going to run through our code and try and understand what each line does, because this is important to understand before we bring our bot online. So we can also refer to the Discord.js documentation for this. And there's a link to that included in our README. And so go back to the README and you can click on Discord.js documentation. And you can use this to understand anything if you are stuck on anything. But we're going to go through this quite briefly. We'll go through each line. I'm just going to hide chat here for a moment. And try and understand what we're looking at here. So open up your index.js file. So this should be like at the root of the directory. So click index.js, and this explains what you're looking at. So those first few lines, this is where we're going to be importing the packages. So packages are basically like tools, I guess, is an easy way of explaining it. Different modules that you can use to build your bot. So they're like building bricks, basically, like building blocks, which you can bring together. Which all have different functionalities and do different things. So you can bring those together to build your bots. Kind of a layman's way of explaining, I guess. Okay, below our packages, we have our Discord.js classes. So we have client, intents, and collections. So these are different classes from the Discord.js library. These are all explained in the documentation. I'll go back over these in a moment. Let's not worry about that too much right now. Line number 10 is your token. So this is importing the token from the env file we created earlier. And so you can see it's getting that variable from the Discord_token variable. And finally, we're importing also our config file, which we created. And this is where we've stored our client ID, as you can remember, and our guild ID, which we'll be testing in. Why do we have a testing guild? I'll come to that in a moment. It's really quite simple, especially when working with slash commands. So line number 14, just below that, this is our client. So this is basically our bot. So this is like the root of our bot. So this creates a new client instance and includes the intent, which we're going to be requesting. So you can find an example of some of the intents in the DJS documentation. I'm going to switch real quick to the documentation just to kind of show you like how to use it so that you can better understand like where you can find those intents, for example. So I'm going to just switch over here to Chrome. All right. So this is the discord.js documentation. Now, once again, there's a link to this in the README. But otherwise, it's really quite simple. It's discord.js.org. Okay, so once you're here, you can click on documentation. And here, basically, this explains everything within the DJS documentation. And just for our example here, we're going to go and look at the client we were looking at earlier. So click client over here, or you can also, up in the search bar here, type client, and you can find it there. So this client constructor has a bunch of options. You can see here we have like a new Discord client options. This is what we were looking at over here. So we have our new client, and these are the options we're going to be passing to our clients. And in this example, we're going to be passing the intents options. So how can I know what can I include as options for my intents? Back to Visual Studio Code, back to Chrome, sorry. What are our options? So if you look at the documentation, you have discord.client and then options. And so options are listed under here in the client options. So click client options, you'll have a list of options we can pass to our client. So we'll go and look for intents, for example, which we were looking at earlier. You can find it down here. And this tells you then, so intents will require intents resolvable. So if you click this, you can then see what kind of intents we can pass to the intents option. So it can be like a string, it can be in a flag. So these are different ways, like different resolvable intents. Now again, if we click this, we'll have an example of different intent flags we can include. So guilds, guild members, guild bands, these are different things you're going to be able to get from the API once you've requested these intents in your client options. So I hope that's a little bit clearer. We're going to just go back to the code. I think it might make it a little clearer again. So we have like dot flags and then guilds. If we go back over to our slide here, we can see that on line 14, we have flags.guilds. So we're requiring the guild's intent. So this will basically allow our bot to see the guilds we're going to be using today. So, all right. So if we move down to line 17, we're creating a collection. So a collection is kind of like a way to store data within your Discord bot, I guess is like a basic way of explaining it. And so what we're going to be storing in this collection is our list of commands. So just below the collection, we have, we're going to be importing our command files. So this is line 18 on your index.js file. So what this does is it goes to the commands directory and it goes through and finds any JS file. And then it saves the data basically from those files into the collection. What this does is it allows us to then publish our slash commands. So the information and the data from our command files inside our command directory will be stored inside the bot and then posted to the API so we can start working with those. So if you scroll down another little bit down to line 29 to 34, you can see that some of the text here is grayed out. So why is this? It's almost the same thing, but there are some differences. So if you look at the first one here, we've got routes.application commands, and then the client ID, which is coming from our config file. So you can see this is config.client ID. So what does this do? It goes in picks config, which is up here. It references config, which we just imported, and it gets client ID from the config file. So this is getting our client ID variable from the config file we created earlier, and it's passing it to this part of the code. What this does is it makes those slash commands public, global. So if you use this line of code, the slash commands you create are going to be available globally over every single guild that your bot is in, but it can take up to an hour. Thank you, Siri. Yeah, thank you, Siri. Go away. So basically, if you publish them globally, the slash commands will be available in every server. But this can take up to an hour to update, so we're not going to be doing this today. I wouldn't recommend that if we're doing testing. So we're going to leave this the way it is for now. And this is going to create slash commands which only work in a guild. So you can see this is routes.application guild commands. So this is to publish slash commands to a specific guild. This is also handy in the future if you're going to be making commands you only want to use, for example, in your support server using your bot, and you don't want those same commands to be accessible to people in other servers. This can be useful, or even developer-only commands. If you have a specific developer-only server, this could be another way of limiting access to those commands to only developers. So what the difference with this is, it also references our client ID, but it also references the guild ID. So it'll be publishing these slash commands to that specific guild. Okay, so we'll be able to move on to the next one. So if we move further down the file again, you can see just below our slash commands where they're published, we have our client ready event. So clients have different events. They're like this ready, interaction create, message delete, even like when you ban members or when members get added or removed to servers, there are different events for different things that your bot can detect and react in different ways to. But the ready event is something that fires once your bot is online and ready. And if you scroll down a little bit more, you can see from line 42 onwards, we have our slash command handler. So this uses the interaction create event. So every time you see client on, this is an event. And so this is going to give us interaction data from this event. So what it's going to do here is basically we're checking. So if the interaction we just received that was just created is a command, if it is not a command, sorry, then we will return. What does return mean? It means just stop here, don't go any further. So if the interaction we get isn't a command, for example, if it's a button interaction, then we can just ignore it. So this line will just ignore every other interaction and only treat commands. So if it is a command, this line won't have any effect. So it'll allow us to move on to the next line. And this is line 46. So we're going to get our command from our commands collection. So what is this? Okay, so client.commands is a collection. So if you remember a bit further up, we created that collection. So client.commands was a new collection. And into this collection, we loaded all of our command files. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to this collection and get the command from that collection, which has this slash command name. So we're basically searching inside the collection of commands for the specific interaction that was sent to the bot. So when I send a slash command to a bot, like if I send the ping command to my bot will get an interaction event here, and the command name will be ping. So what this does is, for example, it'll go and get the ping command from the command name from the command collection, and then send the correct response. All right, so if there is no command, we're going to return. So this is just some error handling. Now, if there is a command, then we can try and execute it. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and execute the command. So it's command, this is getting the command from our collection here, and executing the executable part of the code. We're going to see this later, so don't worry about this too much right now. So we're going to execute that part of the code, and it's passing the interaction data we're getting from this interaction event. It's passing that on to the, basically like the command file, so we can use some of that data in our command, in our response. If this doesn't work, if there's an error, then we're going to catch that error, and it's going to be logged to your terminal. So anytime you see console.error or console.log, for example, this means that those messages will be sent to your terminal. So if there's an error here, you'll see it popping up in your terminal. And then we're also going to send a response in the channel to notify the user that the command couldn't be run. So in this instance, it's going to reply to that interaction that was sent, but instead of sending the command response, it'll send an error message because we weren't able to execute it correctly. All right, so this is basically our /command handler. And once we've got all of this done, we can finally connect the bot to Discord. So we're going to do client.login and pass our token to this. Again, the token is from our env file we created earlier. Okay, well, we have everything set up now, so we're ready to start our bot. So we're going to go back to our terminal here. So back in Visual Studio Code, I can do this live in a moment here, but we're just going to talk through it for now. We're going to install the packages. So packages are from our package.json file. If we type npm space I into our terminal and press return, this will install all the packages from that package.json file, which your bot needs to work. So once your packages have been installed, you can then type node space period, and this will start your bot. And so you should then see the application logging some messages in your terminal as shown below, like this. I'm going to go over now to Visual Studio Code, and we can try this together. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to go and type them in chats. Okay, so I've already installed my packages. As you can see, I have my node modules directory here, which contains all the modules. So I've already done this. I've already created my env file. So I'm going to go ahead now and type node dot. And this will start my bot. So there we go. So it refreshes the / commands and posts them to the API, the Discord API. And so it successfully reloaded my 2 / commands. I have 2, you should only have 1 for now. That's because mine is my capybara command, which we're going to go back over here in just a moment. So my bot is successfully online and ready. So if I go back to my Discord server now, I can see that up in my top corner there, you can see up at the top right, my bot is actually online. So my capybot bot is there. In my testing channel, I can try my ping command because my ping command is already included with my bot. So as you can see, if I do ping, the capybara boat, my capybot will reply with a pong message. So you can see this is working correctly for me, definitely. No issues on that end. So I'm ready to start coding my next command. My bot is online. I'm ready to go. I'm going to go back now to Visual Studio Code. And we're going to code our first command. Okay, do we have any questions for now? I don't believe we have any questions right now, so we're going to move on. Okay, so our next step is writing our first command. So we're going to reference the discord.js documentation here again, and some of this is basic JavaScript. Once again, there are resources for this in the repo description. So feel free to go back and reference those. Okay, so now let's move on and write our first command. So what we'll be making. Today, we're going to be making a slash command, which basically posts some random cute capybara images in the channel to brighten our users' day. So during this example, we will learn how to create a new command, how to make an embed. An embed is basically what you can see there in the response with the yellow line down the side and the text on like the gray background. That's a Discord embed. And so we're going to be learning how to make one of those today. We're going to be learning how to pick a random string from a JavaScript array, basically because that is a skill which is useful to learn, because with that basic skill, you can build a load of other stuff off that. Basically random number generation sort of. So lots of different games can run on that in your bot. You can do loads of stuff with that. And finally, we're going to be learning as well how to reply to a slash command. So you can use this example, you can work along with me if you like. Again, the resources for this, so the capybara images, are all listed on Imgur, and they're in the GitHub repository README. Right down the bottom, you have the link to that, to the gallery of the images, and so you'll be able to just copy the image locations from there and paste them into your code as we work through it, to be able to use the same images as I'm using. Or you can make something different. Make whatever you want. You could replace the images with something different and replace the messages and call your command something else. And that would work just as well. So you're free to make whatever you fancy. But I'll be making a capybara command. Okay, how do we do that? We're going to go back to Visual Studio Code and we're going to click on the Add File button inside our commands directory. And we're going to create a file called capybara.js. I'm going to go over here and go back to Visual Studio Code so we can kind of do this together, so I can walk this through you live. So we're going to go over to our commands directory, click on this, and click to add a new file. So if I go and add a new file here, I'll be able to add a new command to my directory. So I've already made my capybara command, but it could be something completely different. It could be even a ban command. You could call it ban.js, and then start coding your command within that file. But again, we were making capybaras command, so let's stick to that for now. Okay, so we're going to create capybara.js, and so this is what we should. Well, we're not going to see this yet, but this is what we're going to end up with. So I'm going to walk through this with you today so we can understand what we're doing here. So feel free to keep this open in one window and start copying it into your Visual Studio Code IDE. So first off, we're going to need our Discord package. So we're going to go and reference that. We're going to do constant. So this is a constant. This is something which we can keep in our code and it doesn't change. So we're going to be doing constant Discord and then equals require discord.js. So we're requiring the discord.js package. This is to be able to do things later on, like creating embeds. So for example, down here, we're going to be using message embed from the Discord package. So that's why we're going to be referencing that today. So we're doing Discord equals require Discord.js. And then under here, we have module exports. So what are module exports? This is basically the data we're going to be passing to our slash commands back in our index file. So if you remember, we were in the index file. I'll go back over it here so we can see. And we're just going to close terminal real quick. As you can remember, like we were going through the command files here on line 18. We're going through these different command files and then getting the names of the commands. So command.name. Where is that command.name in the code? It's right here. It's right there. So this is the different data that's exported from that file when we go through it. So we're exporting the name of the slash command, the description of the slash command, and in here you can also put your options. So some slash commands will have options, and this is usually an array of different options. So I won't go into that today in this tutorial, but you can find ways of adding options to slash commands in the documentation, which is linked in the README. For today's example, we're not going to be doing that. It's a little bit more advanced. So we're going to keep it really basic, and we're basically just going to have the slash command name, the slash command description, and then execute this part of the code. So again, this is the executable part. And as you can remember, this was in our slash command handler. So our slash command handler is right here on line 43. And the executable executable part of the code is right here on line 51. So we're going to execute that part of the command, passing the interaction data we got from our event to our command. So this interaction data right here is going to be passed through, it's going to be received here. Basically, think of it that way. And then we can use the data we've got from this interaction in our response. So as you can see, if I select this, this is highlighting like different examples of data we're getting from our interaction. So we're able to get the client data, so the bot, so the interaction client username. This will get the username of the bot from the interaction data. I can also get the interaction, get the client avatar, and I'm going to be using this in the footer. We'll come back to this in a moment, but basically this kind of shows you, gives you an example of some of the data you can get from the interaction event. And once again, you can get all of this back in the DJS documentation. You can see all of that. Do we have any questions in chat right now? Yeah, we had some mentions of like if you, yeah, so, okay. We don't have any specific questions, so I'm just gonna go over here now to Chrome again and show you the data we're getting from the interaction. So this is our interaction create event. So basically to find this, you can just type interaction create up here in search, and you can get the interaction create event from client up here. It's the first option. This tells you, if you click on interaction here, all the data that's going to be included in the interaction response, which we can use in our command response. So this is useful because we can detect, for example, which member ran the slash command, what permissions they have, which guild it's in. We can get the bot data from it. We can get the time that the slash command was run. We get the channel it was used in. You can get all sorts of information from this, which is going to be useful in our response. So yeah, I basically wanted to show you this quite quickly so you can kind of get a grasp of all of the data that's being passed to your interaction, which can potentially be used in your command response. So I'm going to go back over now to Visual Studio Code. So what are we doing here in our response? Well, for a start, we're going to get our array of capybara images. So they can be GIFs or images. I called it GIFs, but they're not actually GIFs. I was originally going to use GIFs, but I'm just using static images. Doesn't really matter what you call that. But this is our array of capybara images. So to make an array, we're doing some brackets here and then including a list of URLs. So this is the link to the image. So these are the potential images we're going to be picking from in our command response. So these are all my capybara images. You can get these in Imgur again if you go back to the repo. It's the link right down the bottom. If you want to work along with the same images, feel free to. Just right-click, copy the image location, and paste it in here. But you can really use any images you want. You don't have to use these. Okay, so once we have our array of images, we need to pick one. So what this does is we're going to be picking a capybara image. So we're going to create a new constant here called capybara image. And what we're going to do then is we're going to pick an element from this array. So how does an array work? Let me just go through real quick and show you. So if, say, for example, I want to get the first element from my capybara image array. So what I would do in this instance is I would do this. So the first element from my capygifs array would be 0. Arrays always start at 0. First element is called 0, second element is called 1, etc., etc. So if I want to just only post like the first one from the array, I'd reference 0. But how do I get a random one? I don't want to always post 0. I want to get a different one every time I run it. This is what this part of code does. So it's basically going to do a quick math equation, and it's going to go to our array of images here. It's going to find the length of this array, and it's going to multiply it by a random number and bring it down to it, round it off. So basically what this is going to do is pick a random number between, what have we got? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to pick a random number between 0 and 7. And then that'll be the capybara image, which gets posted in the command response. We do have a question. Why is there no handler and event folder for each system? And is there a permission handler? Why is there no event folder? Yeah, you're asking about like an event handler, I believe. There's no event handler in this example, in this tutorial, but you can find an easy way to make one using the resources in the GitHub repository README. Again, we're not going to go into too much detail in today's tutorial. We're really just going to stick to what we have here. But this tutorial and this code is created in a way that you can reference the djs.guide documentation and use that to build on top of your code. So basically, you can, if you want to create an event handler, you can go to the DJS documentation and, the discord.js.guide documentation. If you go to that, you can find how to create an event handler there, and that will be able to go through it in more detail for you. And the code you have here should be pretty much ready to go, so you can start working with your code off of that documentation. I tried to make it like as close as possible to the Discord.js guide documentation so that you can really find your own help after this event and build whatever you want and find some more advanced stuff as you need it. So yeah, feel free to go back to that documentation, and you can find a way to make an event handler there if you want it. We're not going to be doing that today, but basically what an event handler is, it's kind of like how we're doing commands here. Instead of having a commands directory, we would have an events directory, and then we'd have our message create, interaction create, ready, all of that in that folder. We're not going to be doing that today, but it is a great way of handling events, and I definitely recommend it. I wouldn't recommend having everything in the index file, but we're just making a really simple bot here today, so we're just going to leave it the way it is for now. But again, yeah, feel free to reference that documentation. There's loads of help there. You can even get help in our Discord server. In the development channel, people are really helpful and really friendly. I used it a lot back in the day, so I definitely recommend it. All right, so we're going to move on then. So once we have our capybara image, we've picked out a random capybara image from our array here. And now we can go and make our embed. So this is going to be our embed response. So we're going to create a new Discord embed. So we're going to reference the Discord package here and use the message embed constructor. Inside our message embed, we're going to be setting the title. So what is the title? It's the line of like bold white text, which is at the top of your embed response. And so in this case, we're going to be using an emoji. So this is how to use an emoji. a default Discord emoji in your command response. So it's going to have like a smiley face and then say, be happy like this Cappy. Sorry for the puns, but that's just the way it is. So next up, we're going to set our color. So this is the color of the line down the left-hand side of our embed. And this takes a hex value. So how do you get a hex value? Really simple. Let me show you real quick. We're going to go back over here to Chrome. If I go over here and I want to search, I'm just going to type in like hex color, get a hex color picker within Google. And so you can just basically create a color you want in here. So pick any color you want, make it any tone, and copy this hex code here into your file. Okay, back to Visual Studio Code. So I've got my color here. And I'm gonna go ahead and you can set a description. I don't have a description in mind, but this is how you would set one. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this from mine, but you can type in a text here and this will appear underneath your title and above your image. So I'm gonna remove that from mine from now. And then finally the footer. So this is how to set the footer text in your embed. So this takes two options. The first option is text, and the second option is icon URL. Text is basically the text which is going to appear in your footer. An icon URL, it takes basically an image URL, but we're going to get our image URL from our client avatar. So we're going to go and get the client data from the interaction, reference the user, and get the display avatar URL. So this will get the URL directly to our bot's avatar and use that in the footer. And then finally, we're going to set the image in our embed, which is the big image down the bottom of your embed. And that's where it's going to post the capybara image that we picked from randomly from our array. That gets added in here to our embed. And there we go. We have pretty much all the stuff we need to post the embed we want to post. And once our embed is ready, we can then respond to the interaction. So when someone runs this code, this part of code will run and then reply to the interaction with the embed. So we're going to do interaction.reply and then pass the embeds to our interaction response. Now it's worth noting as well, you can pass multiple embeds to a command response, but really we're only going to be using one, and that's what most bots use most of the time. So there we go. Do we have any questions before we move on? I'm just going to follow chat here. Is it possible to change the description font size? It is not possible to change font size. You can use different parts of the embed to kind of emphasize emphasize text in different ways. So you can emphasize something by setting the title, or maybe the author field, or there are different things you can do, or put it in the description part of the embed. You can also make text bold, italic, underlined. You can put code blocks into embeds. Basically any Discord formatting, the same way you'd format messages within Discord, you can format it the same way in your command responses. So yeah, you can't change the font size, but you can kind of cheat around it, I guess, by if you want to emphasize text in a specific way, then maybe use the title, or you want to make something less apparent, maybe set it as a description. But you can't, like change the order of these or anything like that. So yeah, you can't change the font size. Okay. All right, if everybody's ready, then we can go ahead, I believe. We're going to go back to our slideshow. over here, we'll go back to our slides, and we're going to move on to our next one here, which is testing our command. So we've written up our capybara command, and now we're ready to save it and try it out. So we're going to save this file. So we're going to do Control S or Command S on Mac, and that'll save your file locally to your PC. And then we're going to be able to test it in Terminal. So go back down to Terminal, which is at the bottom of your window. And if you have closed it, go and open it again. It's up the top. Go Terminal, New Terminal. And so then we'll be able to restart our bot. So for this, we're going to exit out of the process we currently have. So the bot is running because earlier on we started it up. We're going to stop it. So we're going to do Control C twice. This will stop the process. So we'll be able to clear our terminal window by typing clear, and then do node space period like we did earlier. And this will restart your bot process and load the new command. And your terminal will now count a total of 2 commands upon starting your bot. So your terminal should look like the screenshot. I'm going to go ahead now and do this live with you in Visual Studio Code. So we're going to go back to VSC here. I'm going to go and open up my terminal because I closed it. All right, my old terminal is right here. So I've got it right here, so I'm going to use this. So I'm going to exit out of this. I'm going to do Control C. And I'm going to clear my terminal, like we said. I just type clear and then return. This is just to keep it clean. You don't have to do that, but it's just much easier to see what you're doing when you're working in a clean terminal. Now I saved my capybara file earlier, so I'm just going to make sure and do Command S to save that. Once I'm on Mac, and then I'm going to be able to restart my bot. So I'm going to do node period and return. And this is successfully reloading my 2 slash commands. So now I have my 2 commands. All right. So if I go back now to Discord, I should be able to do slash capybara. Yep, there it is. And run that. And there we go. I got a random capybara image from my array. And I got my command response saying, be happy like this cappy. Let's try running another one and see what that gives us. As you can see, every time I'm running it, it's picking a different capybara from our array. Now, we're getting sometimes like the same ones again and again, but that's because our array isn't very big, and we're not really handling it in any way to like not get duplicates. That's something you can do in code as well, but I'm just going to keep spamming the cappies right now. But yeah, so it's basically picking a different capybara every time from the array. So I can clearly see my slash command is working. So once I have this basis, I can make a bunch of other commands using the same type of code. So this is like a really basic command response, which you see on a lot of bots, but it is a really great way of learning some basics. It does teach you quite a bit in like how to work with an array, how to work with images within embeds, and like how to work with embeds in general. So yeah, this is like a great way of getting started. For example, my bot, when I started out, was only command responses like this. Like I created my bot just to have a command response, which posted like a GIF of a dog eating broccoli. And like I was building on top of that with like other responses more and more. And so I feel like this is a great way of just getting started. It kind of gives you the bare bones to then move on and build something a bit more complex. So we're going to go back over here to our slides real quick. So yeah, as we can see, it's in our test server. So we can type slash capybara in the channel, and it'll get we'll get our capybara response. Now this will only be like available in our test server. If we're getting any errors, then they'll be logged in our terminal, as we said earlier. And so yeah, you can replace this image with anything you like. Now, how to make your slash commands global. So basically, what have we got so far? We have a bot which has commands which are only usable in our test guild. That's the guild ID we put in our config file earlier on. So I don't want to do that. I want to have a bot which will work in as many servers as I want. So how do I publish my / command globally? How do I make it available in every single guild that my bot gets invited to? We're going to go back to our index command, back to our index file for this. So index.js. And like, as you can see here in this example, you can see this is our guild commands line here. We're going to just select that and comment it out. So we're going to switch this over. So it's control and / or command and / on Mac. So select those lines and do control / to comment them out, or just remove the slashes at the front of the lines and then just swap those around. So this will allow us to make our commands global, and it'll stop posting them to the guild. I'm gonna go back to Visual Studio Code here, just gonna go over this again live. So we'll go over here to our index.js file. Which line is it? It's right here. So as you can see, it's down here, line 29. All I did was I selected this. So it's control shift /. So originally this is what I had. Originally all I had was a bot which was posting guild commands. So / commands to this guild. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to select these 3 lines, command shift / to comment it out. And then select the 3 lines of code above it, which publish them globally, and do command shift / there again. And this will uncomment that. So either just remove the slashes here, you could just delete those, or just type them in if you can't figure out the shortcut. But basically what this does is it switches it around, so we're no longer just posting commands to one guild, we're posting them globally to the API, so they're available in all guilds. So this can take up to an hour to update, so you might not see them in your servers, in your other servers immediately. Yeah, so do we have any questions about this so far? I'm just gonna allow chat to respond if there are any questions. All right, I don't think we have any questions yet. So we're gonna go back over here to our slides. And we're going to save all of those changes on GitHub. So one thing you may have noticed as you were making these changes, down the left-hand side, you have a little notification there with some new files that were created. So what is that? That is basically how we're going to be posting stuff to GitHub. Oh, we have a question here from someone who's asking, can we make some / commands global and some guild only? You absolutely can. You absolutely can. One way of doing that would be perhaps to have your, if you're making developer only commands, for example, have like a separate directory for developer commands. And basically you're going to be loading those in differently. So back in your index file, I'm just going to go back over to Visual Studio Code here real quick. In your index file, up here, so where we're loading our commands here from line 16 onwards, this here, we could do this, but then, for example, if we want to load developer commands, we can add another bit of code in underneath and load our dev commands in here. That could be like client.dev commands could be the collection for it, and then we'd have like our dev command files, which would be stored in dev commands. So we'd make like a new directory over here called dev commands, and then create our dev commands inside that directory. So for example, like new directory like this and call it dev commands. And then like we have our dev commands in here. So like maybe, for example, like a restart or something. I don't know, just for an example. So we could have like a separate directory in here with our developer commands. And what this would do then is it would do the same sort of thing. It would go through that directory and load up our dev commands. So dev commands, set that to a dev command. We don't really need to do that. And then we could basically, down here where we're posting, the difference we would have here, it would be this collection here. This map would be saving. This is what we'd be posting. So what we'd do here is we'd leave both uncommented. And if we only want to post our dev commands to our developer guild, then we'd be posting that collection in here. So like we would have maybe our global commands, which are posted here. This is everything from the commands directory. And then we'd have our developer only commands, which are only posted to our developer guild, which would be here, like for example. So that's just like one example. Maybe like, I mean, you'd obviously have to refine it a bit more than that and do some permissions and error handling, but that you can absolutely have commands like for one specific server. All you need to do is just change that bit of code to only post it to that specific guild, to post those specific commands to that specific guild. That's really all you need to bear in mind. Okay, so back to GitHub. So we have our changes over here. I can remove this because we're not using that at all. So what this does is basically this is to be able to save our commands back to our GitHub fork. So the repo that I sent you earlier, you created your fork of it. That's what we're working off. And so we can save these changes back to GitHub. So I'm going to go and commit these changes. So I would add in a message here. So these are all pretty much new files. So for example, I could just do like init as a message, and then just do command enter. Just save all my changes and commit. And so this will save the changes I made and commit them to our GitHub repo. And so then I can sync those. And so what that will do is it'll upload. I'm not going to do it here because I'm working off the root, but basically it'll sync those back up to your GitHub fork so that your files, the changes you made and the files you added will be reflected in your version of the repository. All right. Someone asks, is it recommended to deploy your commands each time you start the bots? I mean, like if you've made changes, yeah, it's usually, I mean, yeah, basically I just recommend doing it anyway. You can also reload commands without restarting the bot as well. That's something you can also look into. I believe that's included in the Discord.js documentation, discord.js.guide. I believe they do have a tutorial in there for reloading commands without needing to restart your bot client, which is like a best practice, definitely. Especially as your bot scales. You don't want to be like, once you've got a bot in thousands of servers, you don't want to be restarting it every time you want to add a new command or make a change. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, we can go ahead and submit our bot to TopGG. So we're going to go back to Chrome here. Okay, I want to add a bot to TopGG. How do I do that? We'll go, for example, we'll go to TopGG. I'm just going to type it into Google here. So back to TopGG. Our bot is not going to pass verification. I'm just going to let that out there right now. What we created today isn't at all approvable via our guidelines. Simply because it's just not, it only has like one command and a ping command. So in its current state, you can't submit it. But definitely work on it. add in some new commands, create some new commands which you can add into your bot. So maybe you could have your capybara command, but then why not find some images of birds or cats or dogs and make similar commands like that. You could have like post a dog image or a cat image in chat. So you could add in a bunch of other ones. Once you have like a few more, then you can submit your bot to TopGG and get it listed on the site. So how do I do that? All right, so we're gonna log in. So I'm gonna log in. I'm just gonna hide my screen real quick while I log in. So just gonna log in here to my alts. Again, if we have any questions here in chat, just feel free to go ahead and ask. Okay, someone asks if global/commands take time to register into new guilds, won't TopGG reject it? You mean like if you publish your commands globally, because it takes an hour for them to be published, would they like potentially not appear at the time of review? I don't think that's much of an issue right now, simply because queue is a few days. So once you submit to TopGG, there's like a couple of days to wait for your bot to be reviewed by a bot reviewer. So yeah, don't worry about that. It only takes an hour. An hour isn't that long in the scope of bot reviewal, especially when it takes a couple of days for your bot to make its way through queue. So yeah, it takes around an hour for your changes to push out to everywhere. But yeah, don't worry too much about that. It isn't really much of an issue. I definitely recommend getting your bot in a place where you are happy with it before you submit. I wouldn't recommend submitting now, today, and then developing it while it's in queue, because that's kind of setting yourself up for failure, especially right now if you've only got one command on it. Definitely take the time to build something that you want to create. Add in some new commands, get it just how you like it, and once you have a bit more content in there, then feel free to go and submit. Once you've got some new commands in there. All right. So I'm going to go back over here now to Chrome, and I'm going to show you how to submit your bot to TopGG. So we're going to go up here and click Add. And here we can add our Discord bot. Now, this is asking for our Discord bot's application ID. Where can we find this? It's on our Discord developer portal. So I'm going to go back over to my developer portal here and copy my application ID. So this is where we created the bot earlier on. Back on the Discord developer portal, where we set the bot name and the bot avatar. All right, I'm going to go back over here now, TopGG, and just paste my client ID in there. So here, this is really very helpful. I can just find my bot. So I'll click Find Bot, and this will load up my bot's avatar, my bot's name. If your bot is really new, it might not appear right away. So don't worry, just come back in 30 minutes or to an hour, and maybe it might appear then. It just takes a while for that to update to the API. So yeah. So once I've found my bot client, I can start writing my bot page. So this is my bot listing. This is my headline. Okay, so my headline is like sort of like a short description. It's basically a line of text which will appear underneath your bot's name in the search results. So to show you a little bit like what that would look like on the site, I go to like the fun tag here, for example. This is what your headline is. It's this line here, which is like a database of 80,000. It's that line of gray text that's underneath the bot's name. So I can type in here my headline. It's got to be like less than 140 characters. I will say cool and fun bots to brighten your day with capybaras. Okay, that's my headline. Next up, here's my long description. So here I'm going to write up a long description about what my bot does. Now, definitely don't fill this with spam. Take time here to write up a description which really presents your bot and the different features it has. Also, it's worth mentioning if you have a help command, or even just mentioning the different commands your bot does have, you can put them all in here. So I can say, for example, I can like ping, and there's like reply with Pong. For example, I can do /capybara. I can have like some of my commands in here explaining what they do. Posts a cool capybara image chat for everyone to enjoy. And then I can also do different things, like explaining, for example, why did I decide to make this bot? So I can say, for example, I decided to make this bot after following the Build a Bot workshop, for example. So basically, you're going to explain lots of different things in here, filling out your long description. You're going to have to fill this out a bit more. I'm not going to waste too much of our time here today doing it, so I'm just going to break the rules and spam. So I'm definitely going to get declined if I do this, because I'm just copying and pasting to reach the character limit. Definitely don't do this. You do want to write up a description which is 200 characters long, because this will just get declined straight off the bat. Okay, next, if I move down a bit further, I can list my bot's prefix. So where does this appear? If I go and take this example over here, if you open any bot page, you'll see the prefix is listed over here on the side. So you can see for Mude, for example, the prefix is $. It's the $sign. But in our instance, ours is a / command bot. So our prefix is /. Next, you can add up to 12 categories, which best represent your bot. What are categories? They appear down here, but also at the top of the site. But there are so many more. It's not just these. There are lots. Like if you go back and click Explore, you can see there are lots more here, and there are even more which will appear and be suggested once you start typing in the box. So, say for example, do I have a capybara one? Oh, there is a capybara. There are just so many categories up there. There's like you can add categories for anything. So animals. These are different things which would be able to help your bot appear a bit higher in search. But they're also great for SEO on Google, so search engine optimization. So your bot page can appear a bit higher in Google search as well. By having different keywords, and categories help towards that. They definitely help contribute. So yeah, I did animals, capybaras. I can also say, for example, like the fun tag. I can say multifunctional, like lots of different things they can add in here. We can add up to 12. Next up, this is like a pretty recent feature. It's a new feature added to TopGG where you can use languages. So my bot is only only usable in English. But if your bot is available in other languages or even multiple languages, you can list them all here. So mine is available in English. Maybe I also have it in French. I can add in multiple languages here, which are supported by my bot. Mine's only English, so I'm gonna leave it that way for now. And this is your invitation URL. So this is what we created earlier on when we were inviting our bot to the server. Yeah, we don't have to fill this out. I'm not going to because I don't have any specific permissions I'm going to be asking for, except for the scopes, the / command scope, which I do need an invitation link. So I would fill that out differently using the same one we did in the slideshow. I'm going to leave that way for now. Just going to explain how to do this for now. The TopGG server URL. So if your support server is listed on TopGG, for example, if you did like add your Discord server over here, and it's listed on the site, you can just post in your server's ID in here, your guild ID, and it'll be listed in the sidebar as your support server. I don't know if there's an example back here on Moodle. Don't know if they added it or not. We can just check and see. They didn't set it up, but yeah, okay. It does usually appear on the sidebar. They didn't set it up, but you do get a little card popping up with your server avatar, server icon, sorry, and server name. Next is your support URL. So this is the Discord invitation link to your support server. And this appears like this in the sidebar. And we can also include some different socials. So for example, websites, other things, they're right down here. So if you have a Twitter account for your bot, a Reddit subreddit, or anything really like a TikTok account, Facebook, YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, you can share all of that in here. And then finally, if you have a note for the bot reviewer, you can include it in here. So say, for example, I'm going to say, please approve my Cappy boat. I don't have to, you literally don't have to write anything here, but I'm just going to say that with a little heart. All right. So now I'm going to go next step. And this will give me like a recap of everything I just entered, so I can check over all those details before I submit it to the site. So before I submit, I'm going to want to check the bot guidelines. And I might also want to check and see how the bot reviewal process works. So what are our bot guidelines? You can click read more and see what exactly we look for when we're approving bots on the site. So there are lots of different rules you need to follow. But most of these are also parts of Discord terms of service. So it's really like if you're following our guidelines, you can be sure you're also following Discord's guidelines, hopefully. Definitely recommend reading Discord's terms of services as well if you're getting into bot development, and also community guidelines, making sure you're like up to date with all of that, making sure you're not breaking any rules. But we have some extra rules we add on top, just to keep our site safe and our users safe. And all of our bots are reviewed manually by bot reviewers. We have a great team of bot reviewers. Yeah, definitely make sure you're following those guidelines. And I understand that my bot needs to be online to pass review. It obviously needs to be online. I'm basically saying here, I'm responsible for keeping my bot online. Because if my bot isn't online when it gets to the time for review, then the bot reviewers cannot review it because it won't respond. So definitely make sure you keep your bot online. So once I've got all that done, I'm ready to go and submit. Yay! So Cappy Boat is now in the verification queue, and estimated waiting time is around 1 to 2 weeks. So currently, I think it's under a week right now. So if you are submitting your bot, it's been relatively short so far this year. We've managed to recruit some more bot reviewers, and we've also had some initiatives to try and keep queue as low as possible, to try and keep approval times short. And so luckily, since January, we've managed to keep it thereabouts, like under a week. So you shouldn't have to wait too long for this at the moment. But queue can grow and shrink depending on the season, for example, time of year, like lots of different things, like if people are creating more bots or not. Really depends. So yeah, we've submitted our bot to TopGG, and we've created our commands. And so, congratulations. You are now a bot developer. All right, I'm going to just, before closing up here today, I'm going to just check and see if we have any other questions. So if you have any questions, now is the time to ask. just pop them into YouTube chat. Christmas bots are on the way. Yep. You could even create a Christmas bot using the code we used today. Replace those images with some Christmas themed things. So maybe like post a wreath or post a random tree or post some cookies and milk. I don't know. It could be something different. What else do we have? About the prefix field. What if the bot has both configurable message prefix and a mention prefix and a slash prefix? You can put them all into your prefix field. You could like put in the prefix and also mention that it has slash commands, or even like put in brackets custom to kind of notify users that they can customize that prefix as well. Just moving up a little bit more there. There was another question a bit higher up. Can you show me how to add options to slash commands? Yep, I cannot show you today, but it is in the discord.js.guide documentation, which is linked in the README on GitHub. If you go down there, that does explain in more detail how to use options in slash commands. Again, as I mentioned earlier on, the code we used today and the code that this basic bot is built off that documentation. So after this event, you can go and refer to the discord.js.guide documentation and build on top of the code we have here already using that documentation. So if you need any help creating an event handler, like we mentioned earlier on, or adding options to slash commands, or building other things on top of the functionality we have already, then go to that website and use that documentation to build what you want to build. Johan asks, when is the guide to create a clone of PixieBot? Never. Will not be open source ever. Yes, do we have any other questions? I think we've answered all the ones from YouTube chat, at least. Right. Okay, so thanks everybody for coming. If you have any questions or if you have any difficulty, feel free to go and check out the TopGG Discord server. In there, we have a development channel, which has a really active community of bot developers in there, which they'll be able to help you out if you're getting stuck. So feel free to go ahead and ask your questions in there. Definitely just don't go in and ask and say, how can I do this? Definitely try and code something yourself. Use the documentation, which I referenced earlier on. Use the Discord JS documentation as well. Try and build something before you come into the server, definitely. It's better for you to learn as well, and it will also make everyone else's job a lot easier when they're coming to try and help you. So definitely try and code something before you go asking for help. And if you do get stuck, we do have a great community of bot developers in there which will be able to help you out. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM on Discord. My DMs are always open. Also, if you need any more documentation, everything's linked in the GitHub repo. I believe that's pretty much everything we have for today. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask in the development channel. And this whole event is recorded and will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel later on in the week, or even today, maybe. Yeah. So thanks everybody for coming. Definitely great to have everybody with me here today making this spot. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. So have a great rest of your week. Thanks.